Hey everybody, today we are talking about Finding My Voice by Marie Myung Oakley. This is a story about a teenage girl in her senior year named Ellen who is preparing to go to college, applying for applications at really prestigious colleges, and just going through the motions of being a teenager, except with one bigger difference in that being that she is bullied for her race. Now, right from the very beginning of the book, I think in the second chapter, she's getting onto the bus to go to the first day of her senior year, and one of the kids passes by her on the bus and calls her a racial slur. And she's Korean, Korean American, and it shocked her when she heard that. She just kind of stopped and didn't say anything and kind of ignored it, but deep down, it wasn't something she was ignoring. She was just thinking, I couldn't have possibly heard that correctly. That couldn't have been what really just happened. And it was just kind of shocking to her for her to hear someone say that just right to her face or from behind her as trying to get on a bus. It just seemed like something that shouldn't have happened. Obviously shouldn't have happened. And throughout the book, this doesn't happen like constantly, but it happens enough. I mean, even just once is a problem, of course, but like it happens enough to where in one instance, a girl is saying really stupid, offensive things, and she's like, I can't take this anymore. So she goes to her coach, because it happens in her gymnast class, and she goes there and she's like, I'm just gonna quit. And the teacher's like, why? We're like partway through the season and you're doing well. Why would you do that? And she didn't want to name names, but she was like, somebody is just calling me really rude names and I just can't take it anymore. But she was convinced to stay on, and so she did. And luckily it died down and wasn't really happening for the rest of the season. But she tried. She just didn't get it because that girl, she just always thought that girl was really cool and nice and popular, and she didn't understand why all of a sudden she was treating her that way. Like, Ellen is not the type of girl who is rude to like anyone. She's just very down to earth, chill, but also very pressured by her parents to get into a good college, especially her dad wants her to get into good college, Harvard specifically, because that's where her older sister is currently at. And so there's this big amount of pressure for her to do well. And so she applies to go to 3 different schools, Harvard being one of them. Meanwhile, she meets a boy who starts paying a lot of attention to her, and she's really excited about it because she thinks he's really cute. And so there's, that kind of going on. Some typical high school stuff. She has got some really good friends as well and goes to a couple of parties, but spends a lot of time studying so that she can get good grades to be able to get into these colleges. It's not a particularly long story. It just covers her senior year from the beginning to the end. We get to learn about the colleges that she applies for. She goes and she visits each one. She gets back some letters on whether she is accepted or denied, and we get to find out what college she ends up choosing to go to. And we get more information about the characters that are being racist and rude to her. We get more on that. The whole main thing of this book is finding my voice, because at the beginning she of course is ignoring this, and then later she talks to her gym coach to say hey, and she's like trying to stick up for herself and saying no, okay, I don't want this. And she's going about it in, not directly to the person who said those offensive things to her, but still she's not ignoring it. And so she's starting to figure out what she can do to stick up for herself and figure out who she is. And that, of course, that's what we all wonder when we're in high school and even in college. Even now, it's like sometimes it takes a while to figure out who we are and what we want to do and who we want to be and what beliefs that we want to have and be strongly into. And so yeah, she's just trying to find her way and find out more about herself, and also being able to speak up for those things that she believes in and that she cares about, and just sticking up for herself. And so, yeah, it's a very nice, quick story. Doesn't take very long to get through, less than 200 pages. Something that's really interesting to note about this book as you go into it is it was actually written in 1993. And I didn't know that until like the end when I was reading the afterword by the author explaining why she kept it in that setting in that time. And I'm like, well, duh, why didn't I see that sooner? Because there are no mentions of cell phones. There are no mentions of like really like any digital type thing. Like when she does her applications for Harvard, she sends them in like a letter and she gets acceptance letters. She doesn't get like emails or things like that. It's very like obvious that it's not set in this time. But when I saw this with this cover, it looked like a brand new book. I saw it in 2020. That's when it was able to be revived and got another printing because of some articles online that were written about some books that were like, oh, like a list of books you should read, and it got recognized again, and so they're like, let's publish it again. And so it's got a fancy new cover. It was in the YA section, and this was in 2020 when I was like getting ready for my goal of just wanting to read Asian literature. I might have actually bought it in 2021 at the beginning of the year when I was getting a collection of these books, and I just didn't read it until the end of 2022. It was one of my last books that I read in 2022, and I just assumed it was a new book because it looked like it. And then everything made sense. It makes some references to some movies that they were like, let's go see a movie at the drive-in, and I was like, that's an older movie. I wonder if it's just like a retro theater that they play old movies and that's like the thing they do. But no, it's just movies that were actually coming out during that time that the book was written. So it was like, yeah, I didn't put two and two together. My husband's like, that's why you always read the copyright page. And I'm like, yeah. Because yeah, I mean, after I read the afterword, I went and looked and I was like, oh yeah, copyright 1993. Okay. So if I had read that, I would have known. And it said this edition first published in 2020. So we know that it was a reprint. So anyways, yeah, always read the copyright page. But regardless of that fact, it still holds up now, even though there's not any of that, recent day time stuff. It doesn't need it to still tell the story and to still, bring up the fact that racism is still a thing, and it was still a thing in the 90s when this was written, and it's unfortunately still a thing now, and it's not something that we should allow to happen. If it is happening to people around us, or of course to ourselves, we should use our voices to tell those people that what they're doing isn't right and that they shouldn't be saying those kinds of things to people. It's not fair. It's not proper. It's not any of their business what background we have. It doesn't make us any different. Like, obviously we have differences in our cultures. We have certain differences, but we're all still people, and we all still deserve to be treated well and good and nice and, respectfully. We should be respectful to anyone. And it's just, that it is set in high school, and high school, we're all stupid when we're in high school. We do stupid things that we later look back on and are like, that was a stupid thing for me to do. I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that. But it still doesn't make it an excuse. It still doesn't mean that it was okay to do because, oh, I was young, so it's okay. I mean, you're still old enough to make your own thoughts. You're still old enough to know between right and wrong when you're at high school age. And so you should still know how to treat people. It's a good book. It's nice to have this perspective and learn about this perspective of this character and how she deals with these things as she's preparing to go to college. If you're looking for something that is not going to take too long to read but also has a good story and is a YA book, then this is a good one to go for. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.